Grow up. Well, he also came here when he was young. But I still like his. And like for the creators from
And exactly. So I did them, but I only have 20. Is that okay? But I sent it, you saw also. Hey, Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. So I know it's post Elul, and I said I did Chuba in Elul, but now it's post Elul. But it's really, we are going to start generally earlier. And yes, thank you. And in general, it says, I just saw it this morning, that it says that the year usually continues until 11:40. But for those of you who have been here, you know it usually continues closer to 12. I hope that's okay. But anyone who has to leave earlier, to definitely not feel uncomfortable. And I also saw that, correctly so, again in the introduction, albeit and thank you, Amanda, again for, I hope that this is a responsibility. Mamash, thank you for catching us all up on how we began this year already in Elul with Perek Yudchet of Sefer Shmuel Aleph, which, as you know, just as a general introduction, again, what we call Sefer Shmuel Aleph is really the division of the Septuagint. And when in the 2nd century BCE, the Ptolemies basically forced the Jews to translate the Tanakh into ancient Greek, and in doing so, all of Tanakh, they were basically the ones to divide both Sefer Shmuel and Malachim respectively into Shmuel Aleph, Shmuel Bet, Malachim Aleph, Malachim Bet. And even though we're going to see that part of the division does make sense, but just as any division, and as we started in Mibreshit this past Shabbat, as we started learning the Parshiot HaShavua, I hope that you're all sensitive to the Parshiot Ptuchot and Stumot, again, to the open and to the close, which are really the objective divisions of how we learn both Chumash and Navi and Ktuvim, and therefore the not only chapter divisions, but also the Sefer divisions is really part of interpretation. However, because it became canonized in as the Septuagint, and all the future translations were based on the Septuagint, so unfortunately it's made its way into the translations of Tanakh, so that when, again, even with regard to the printing of our Tanakh in Hebrew, other than, as you know, the Keter Ram Tsova, the Aleppo Codex that preserved the initial means of writing a Sefer Torah, unfortunately, even our Koran editions still have the division of Sefer Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Bet, Malachim Aleph, Malachim Bet, but we are going to refer to them as Sifrei Shmuel, albeit, as we've discussed numerous times, Shmuel Hanavi is the attributed author of Sefer Shmuel. We noted that he obviously cannot be writing all of the prakim of Sefer Shmuel by virtue of the fact that very soon we're going to hear about his death. So it can't be that he wrote all of those posthumously. Rather, the Talmidim that continue not only themes of Sefer Shmuel, but also the style of Shmuel Hanavi, namely Gad Hanavi and Natan Hanavi, who are going to accompany David HaMelech and basically serve as his court prophets, even during this transition of the rise of David. They're going to continue with the style, and therefore it's attributed to Shmuel, even though, if you remember, not only from the end of last year, but the beginning of this year, we noted how really the transition is between Perek Tet Zayin and Perek Yudchet, that basically we've ended with the last of, in Perek Tet Zayin, the last of the chapters that seem to be written directly from Shmuel, with a much more positive approach and focus on Shaul. And now we're focusing on David. Not only are we focusing on David, but what the Navi brilliantly does is revisit many of those relationships that we've already seen presented by Shmuel with regard to David. Basically, we've seen a Shaul-David relationship. What do I mean by that? Again, turning, for example, to both Gana to Perek Tet Zayin, we see that even when Shmuel Hanavi goes to anoint David Hamelech and David as king, notice that right afterwards, Perek Tet Zayin, chapter 16, and verse 13, Vayikach Shmuel et Keren Hashem, and Vayimshech oto bekerev Echav, Vatitzach ruach Hashem al David, ma'ayom hahu v'mala, Vayakam Shmuel vayelech haramata. It seems that he goes home, but then he writes more about Shaul. V'ruach Hashem sara me'im Shaul, ubiatato ruach ra'a me'et Hashem. We still hear, wait a second, what's going on with Shaul, even when now he's appointed a divine, again, the divinely appointed David as king. And just to corroborate this even further, just continue a few psukim later, and we see that according to Shmuel, how does David end up in Shaul's palace? Because of the invitation of Shaul. So it's really Shaul and David. And when Shmuel described this relationship, he describes it in glowing terms, basically, as we discussed numerous times, showing us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set the scene for Shaul to have, we'll even call it a calm and natural transition through David. Take a look just for a moment in Pasuk Yud Chet. Again, I've seen, still back to chapter 16 for a minute, verse 18. Hine ra'iti ben li Yishai beit halachmi yodea nagen gibor chayil ish machama v'navon davar v'ish tawar v'Hashem imo. Meaning, this is a presentation to Shaul about David. Shaul sends Yishai, okay, send me your son. And sure enough, the next thing we know, Pasuk Chaf Aleph, so again, chapter 16, verse 21, Vayavod David al Shaul, Vayamod lefanav, Vayahaveu ma'od. Here, I would argue, this is the first depiction of the Shaul-David relationship. Now, again, why am I phrasing it as Shaul-David relationship? Because that's how Shmuel's writing it. Exactly. Shaul initiated. Shaul loves David. Isn't this beautiful? Vayhilo nosek hilim, vayishlach Shaul al Yishai lemor yamona David lefanai, ki matachem be'inai. I want to keep David here. Vaya biyot ruach elokim al Shaul. And every time Shaul has a ruach elokim, notice Shmuel doesn't even say it's a ruach elokim ra'ah. He already introduced it as a more negative one. But still, he brings David, v'ravach l'Shaul, v'tov lo, v'sar me'alav ruach hara'ah. In other words, if the events would just have continued, if the relationship would have even maintained the status quo, you can imagine what would have happened, especially including now Perek Yud Zayin, the famous story of David and Goliath, which is somewhat ironic, because really, whose war is it? It's not David's war, it's Shaul's war. And with all of that, again, even the end, and this seems to be written, obviously, with a focus on David, probably Gad Hanavi writing the story, as we discussed. But what's fascinating is that now we have a different account of their relationship, not just of the events that we've explored, I feel, for many hours, but now we have a different depiction of the relationship. So let's just revisit the relationship. And now we're going to understand it from a different perspective. The end of Perek Yud Zayin, if you recall, was Shaul apparently not even recognizing David. And therefore we said, okay, there seems to be some type of chronological aberration here with regard to the presentation of the stories. We already proposed all different parshanim, so we're not going to revisit that. But what we are going to revisit is particularly the relationship, and you'll see why. Again, what's fascinating about what we find at the end of Perek Yud Zayin, Pasuk Nun Hey, verse 55 in chapter 17, V'kirot Shaul et David yotzei lekras haplishti amar al Abner sar hatzava ben mi ze hana'ar Abner. And even though some of the Parshanim say, okay, he really didn't recognize him, or he didn't have such a relationship with David at that point, David was still perhaps going back and forth. Again, the very fact that he doesn't even know his Yishai's son, but he's the one who requested of Yishai to send his son, giving us the impression that really the story happens earlier. But notice, not much of a relationship by Yomar Abner. Even Abner doesn't know who he is. So in Perek Tet Zayin, in chapter 16, we saw that he's already going out on military expeditions with Shaul as his mentor. All of a sudden, chapter 17, even The general has no idea who he is. And with all this, only after the story, and this is why this seems to be the chronological synchronization, that it's really only after the David and Goliath story, only after one of the attendees of Shaul can even say that he's a Gibor Chayil, because this is really our first expression thereof. So our sense is chapter 16, the end of 16, chronologically really came after chapter 17, just to quickly resolve many of the tensions and difficulties that we've explored. But now we're going to focus again on the relationship, chapter 18.
Shani, this pasuk, nun hey.
Yes.
What? I think it's quite unusual that it says Amar el Avner Tzatzava Ben Mise Hana Avner. Avner is mentioned 3 times.
Beautiful.
And he was the Tzatzava of.
And we haven't heard about
Shaul.
him until
And
now.
I think it's unusual that he's named 3 times here.
Yes.
To some kind of juxtaposition with David.
Yafe ma'od, yafe. Also, he's asking Ben Mi Zahanar, and who is this person? Avner, right? Basically, Av and Ben. His Avner is the son of Ner, right? So we have Avner, you should know. You are, again, your Av is Ner. Who is his Av, right? That's also part of the play on words going on. But you're 100% right that it shows also a certain almost dependency on Avner. And if he doesn't know who he is, it must be that Avner, you're the Sartzava, it's your responsibility. It's another way of Shaul where we've already seen this personality trait where he deflects responsibility. How could it be that there's someone who's fighting in my national war as the victor? And I don't know who he is, but you know what? It's not my responsibility. You're the Sartzava, Avner. So Avner, who is he? Avner, you should know who he is. And Avner says, almost embarrassingly, I don't. And which again underscores that, was he really in the military until that point? Certainly not distinguished. If anything, as Rashi says, he's still in the going back stages. But as we understood it as well, it could be that he hasn't even been invited yet to come to Shaul's house, let alone to be a part of the army. But it was really Perek Yud Chet with which we ended. If you remember before our special shiurim for Yom HaKippurim, that it was, by the way, did everyone have a lot to think about over Yom Kippur? And again, premonitions of Nevuah. Anyone experience any premonitions of Nevuah? Okay, but definitely a lot of mixed emotions. You did dream. Yeah, I was just going to say, thank you. But the reason I was asking this was because I also, meaning, and I had pictures of Hatufim coming out.
Yeah. I was with a friend and I gave her a big hug.
Yes.
And I said, they're free. And this was in a dream. And I was thinking of you when I woke up.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. So if we're already talking about relationships in the shiur, so I actually, Sharon, please forgive me for embarrassing you. I actually had like a premonition of them coming out and a picture of you, and just what you must be feeling. And yes, so a lot of these premonitions, which by the way are based on what? Why did we all our hopes that we've been having for 2 years, meaning, can you imagine Shaul, based on what we've been saying, these are our innermost feelings, right? I mean, these are our tefillot, these really were our halomot. And all of a sudden, when the situation is there, just as I told you, sometimes I have these virtual conversations, but I'm not sure because now I met you. Did I have that? Did I not have that? And I had pictures of the really in one of my dreams. One of the fathers is hugging his son, saying Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, like Yaakov and Yosef, and then it happened. Like, did I imagine that video, or did that video with Yosef Chaim? Did that really happen?
Or did you
I did.
have the same so strongly?
Isn't that something? Which is a little scary.
It's the same dream.
That we dreamt the same dream, right? Which could also be 100%.
You also had
Yes.
shadows of Yosef dreaming the same dream.
Nachon.
Can I ask
Okay, now it's all coming back. Okay, but now back to the text.
Can I just
Yes,
ask you one
the
thing?
Simcha.
Happening, or, you know, then when they sing a bit, na 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 na, and then
They don't do it so much here.
No, they do.
Only in Vienna.
About Chalamot.
And
Exact-
what I was thinking, if it's
Yes,
a good dream.
If it's a good dream, Exactly. And if you were Shaul HaMelech, what would you say? Hashem, I've had a really strong nevuah, bad dream. Please
Let it not happen.
let it not happen.
Would
And
you
who is
say
it
that?
really up to? No, you're supposed to look at it and not say it. Yeah.
What you said?
They hear its own words, but then it talks about all these different angels that are exactly in charge of halomot, like putting these ideas into one's head. Because just as the Rambam says, nevuah, there are many different levels of nevuah. Some of the levels, you think it's God speaking, but it's really a malach. Like a malach comes into your head. You may think it's God, but it's really a malach. So there are malachim that are in charge of halomot.
So I
Expressions of
told, I was in shul with my daughter and I started to read the thing because I always don't like about dreams and everything. And she nudged me and said, you're not supposed to say that like that in whole. So it's much a longer singing and everything for people to say it, and we're not supposed to say it here.
Right,
And that's
so
why
if you can manage to say it, if they do die, 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 die enough, then in time for you to be able to say amen. But she's right that it's more important to say amen for Yasem Lacha Shalom than it is for you to say L'chalomot.
why is it something?
Oh, why in Chutz La'aretz? Because it's much more, it's uncommon in Chutz La'aretz. So they, it's more Sfaradim. Here, and Shalosh Regalim, right? So some of you were saying that sometimes they have a longer nigun on Shalosh Regalim here to make it special. Now, why is it that we talk about dreams during Berchat Kohanim? Because during Berchat Kohanim, really what's going on? We're all experiencing this bracha that's coming through the Kohanim. You should be in a different state of mind during Berchat Kohanim.
But we do, so, yeah. It'll give you time here.
Exactly. So again, sometimes like I'll say it just because I'm missing it. I'll say it, after V'yasem L'cha Shalom, because now the Chazan is singing Sim Shalom to Judy Fisher, and so great, so then I'll say it after also, meaning it's just connected because of the connection to Kadosh Baruch Hu at that time, and we believe that Chalamot are, again, Chazal say it's the 60th of Nevuah. So it is.
I have a question.
Yes.
So my son says to me that you shouldn't say it because it creates like a separation.
So excellent. Sometimes people don't realize that the reason we're talking about Chalamot is because of a feeling, literally the brachot of Hashem, again, surrounding us, right? Sfaradim, I love doing this also, right? Sfaradim put their hands out, right? Meaning believing that the brachot are there and we have to literally be makabel. I have a friend what's it called, who practices the energy waves?
Reiki.
Sorry?
Reiki.
Yes, thank you. And I say that really like Berchat Kohanim is rooted in science, that if you put your finger, you'll even feel like energy waves in your fingertips. Try it.
Well, I was a time when I did yoga like very, very, very religiously. Not religiously, but just for exercise.
Excellent. That was an excellent qualification.
Just for exercise. But I would get into like this meditative state, and then I would feel like this vibration and heat and energy in my hands. And then during Shmona Esrei, I felt very spiritual in the yoga practice, even though it was like in my house, like on a video. It wasn't like anything like that, but I did get a very sense of like, I don't know. And so then I wanted to channel that feeling like during davening. So and like, when you stand Shmona Esrei, like you can tighten your core and you could like, I think you're supposed to like,
You're going to give us tefillah lessons. Yes,
Like,
you are supposed to.
right? Like, tighten your core, like stand straight, have your feet, and when you bow and everything, and then I really like whenever I daven Shmona Esrei to keep my hands open, because I do, when I get into it, feel a sort of
You
energy.
feel the energy flow.
And
No
it does,
question.
there is a thing to it.
I'm corroborating that. There really is a thing to it. There really is. So even though it's a Sephardi minhag, yes, I've adopted it because I feel it. They do.
They're
They
more
do.
connected to that part that we were not allowed to be connected to for a while.
Okay, we're not even
Right?
going to go there right now, but yes. So again, meaning that Rizal speaks about his Sephardi roots is that way. But the reason I say that is because there definitely is something that you're feeling during Berchat Kohanim, so that's why the tefillah of the dreams comes up. But it's more important if it's going to distract you from even, again, paying attention to the bracha, feeling the energy of the bracha, then again, then better not to say
And
it.
the Amen, yeah.
And the amen, it bothers me, people are, and they're still saying, and they miss the amen. Because they have the longer, why do they have the longer nigunim in Chutz La'aretz? So that's what we said, because it's less common, so they elongate it. They embellish it. They embellish it. They only dochen and answer. Sfaradim, by the way, in Chutz La'aretz, dochen every day, meaning different minhagim Sfaradim, where they do that and then they won't embellish it the same way. Okay, so back to Perek Yud Chet. Now we take a look at what we started, if you remember, with our premonitions of dreams. Again, and now we're going to explore the second half of Perek Yud Chet. So that's why I'm reviewing the beginning of Perek Yud Chet, where we see a very different depiction of the relationships. So not only do we understand that they're written by different Nevi'im, but they're really coming to depict, again, very, very different dynamics. What do I mean by this? Perek Yud Chet pasuk Aleph. Vayikach haloto ledaber Shaul v'nefesh Yonatan nikshara b'nefesh David. Based on this account, Shaul doesn't know who David is, but who feels a very strong connection with David? Yonatan. And who's initiating this relationship? Yonatan. It starts with Yonatan feels connected with David. Vayavehu. And now we explored this already. Wait a second. Last time we heard that Shaul loves David, but in what context even did Shaul love David? And because of the music. Vayavo David el Shaul, vayamod lefanav, vayaveu. And we saw that he was being brought in to play music for him, and only then vayilo nosek elav. Again, here, Yonatan just loves him, right? Vayaveu. And we explored why would Yonatan love him? And do you remember we discussed because he sees, again, David's relationship, when David comes back and they asked him in the pasuk before, Ben miata hana'ar, Vayamar David ben Avdecha Yishai beit halachmi, that he also identifies himself through his father, but he sees that David is the foil for who he is. He's also identified. He's Yonatan ben Shaul, but he has to be really a very, we'll even say a demure, again, submissive son, whereas David, again, is literally, and we've already seen, remember his father, he wants to go out and fight, and his father says no, and yet he finds a way to go and initiate in a very independent way. So this already tells us, it's almost as if Yonatan is looking and saying, wow, right, that's the son that I wish I could be, right? That type of warrior. And here it's not he invited him, he took him. Notice that here the relationship is depicted very differently. It's not as if Shaul invited the father to send the son, and then he loves him. Here it seems that he basically forced him in on almost, right? Lo nitano lashuv beit aviv. It's not that he asked Yishai, he basically said, you're not coming home anymore, right? You're staying right here. Vayichrot Yonatan b'David b'Rabato oto kenafsho. And now we see that there is a special relationship between Yonatan and David. We already discussed, this is a brit, it's a political alliance, right? That again, if Shmuel Hanavi wrote chapter 16, setting up the scene for a beautiful continuation of David being in the home, here we see, and Yonatan is setting it up. Yonatan, basically, what would this Brit be? So don't worry, we're going to see how it's referred back to. The Brit is that we're going to work together. So even if I'm king, you'll be my Sartzava. If you're the king, then I'll be the Sartzava, meaning that they're going to work together. They could have inherited the throne together. So notice what the Nevi is doing. He's not just telling you about this beautiful relationship between Yonatan and David. He's contrasting Yonatan's relationship with David to Shaul's relationship with David. Everything that we saw Shaul does, Yonatan does, but in a much more respectful manner, in a much more appropriate manner. And why am I using that term of appropriate or mat'im? Because as opposed to Shaul, who took off his warrior vestments, who took off his armor to place them on David in Perek Yud Zayin, and David rejected them. Again, here, Yonatan, of his own accord, again, gives his me'il asher alav. And we know that it's also a reference to armor. But why does Shmuel's student use specifically the term me'il? Because who else had a me'il? Because of Shmuel's me'il. And because of that ambiguity of who tore whose coat, right? That basically by giving a me'il to David, what is he saying? I'm not just giving you my armor, I'm giving you my malchut.
Also, the use of the word hitpashet in the hitpael.
Yes.
There can be no discussion.
No
as to whether he took
discussion.
it or he gave it to
Exactly. Kol hakavod, meaning he's stripping himself, right? Everyone see this? Or we can say he's divesting himself
somebody. Of what?
of royalty, right? He's giving us of his own accord. And I remember someone asked, does Yonatan know the nevuah of Shmuel to Shaul, that Ma'asicha Hashem? Probably not. Remember, that was just between Shmuel and Shaul? Probably not. In which case, Yonatan on his own realizes that who is Re'acha HaTov Mimaka? That's David. And why? Why? He barely knows him right now. Why? Not just because of his warrior capabilities, but because of how he sees him as a son. In other words, Yonatan knows that what will hold him back, even in inheriting the throne, he's going to inherit the entire legacy of Shaul, right? He already has adopted the personality to a certain degree, aspects of Shaul's personality, and he knows that that's not as successful as David's, again, even his Admoni personality, of that initiating personality. He appreciates. That's like and now we're going to see this in the David Michal relationship as well, that we've already seen Shaul, right, for the past 2 years. Shaul is fine and refined and not just tall, dark, and handsome. He listens to his na'ar. He's respectful. He really is your classic, I'm going to say, stereotype of kingship. And who is David? Remember, we had a whole shir on first impressions. Shmuel introduces David to us as if he's Esav, as if he's Esav. Remember, that's Moni and Parat, and it's only Hashem says, yeah, but you don't know what's in that heart. His heart, again, is actually very different than Shaul's. I don't want the Shaul type anymore. Mastiv. No. Ki adam yireh le'inayim, ve'elokim yireh le'levav. That's exactly it. Shaul on the outside is such a king. He really fits the bill. Then if we were having a New York mayoral debate, but definitely a presidential debate. Again, do you remember Nixon and Kennedy? Or do you remember, again, the mayoral candidates? If it's broadcast, who would you say is more fit to being king? Shaul, again, heads and shoulders. How is David going to come across? I don't even know if his shirt is tucked in, right? Meaning, God, that's David. And by the way, why do I say that? I didn't just randomly choose that because that's what Michal sees, right? His shirt isn't tucked. Okay. In any case, so we're going to see that Yonatan recognizes that's exactly the personality that we need as king. He divests himself of a me'il. And we said basically he's going to train him in even Binyamin style warfare. So notice that now I'm just paying attention. He doesn't just have a relationship with Shaul, which here it's presented as neutral, even neutral negative perhaps, as opposed to chapter 16 where it was very positive. Here, Yonatan has that contrasting relationship because here Yonatan initiates the very positive relationship. But now we also have another component of David. They like David as well. And we're going to see how they play a tertiary role. Why deja vu? Beinei Abdei Shaul. Oh, I said Abdei David. Sorry, I meant Abdei Shaul. That even Navadim.
It says here that Yonatan gave him whatever he gave him, and then it says, "B'chol asher yishalchenu Shaul, yishalchenu b'ma."
In war, the context is war. He's sending him out to.
With these clothes, was it? That's what
No, but it is kashto v'chaguro. That's why I said the context is a military context. That it does. We said he doesn't really give David his bow. It means he trains him, and he's teaching him all of this. And sure enough, this is how the Parshanim understand it as well, right? When you train someone, what do you tell them? What would be the you know, the pinnacle of your training. Like, okay, now you can use my bow. But of course he didn't, meaning especially Jonathan probably is a lefty, you know, from Binyamin. And
It's like when a mifaked gives his kumta to the
Thank you.
mitztayen.
Shani, beautiful, beautiful. It's giving the kumtat to the mitzdayin. Yafet ma'od. I'm going to use that from now on. Video. That's it. By the way, and what happens to that kumtat? It's now he passes on to the next one, meaning it's really more symbolic video. So that's how it's being used here as well. And I don't want to revisit all the psukim that we then spoke about from pasuk vav through pasuk chet, which we said may not even be exactly chronological, meaning here it's depicted as if it's, you know, moments later, but it could be weeks and months later. Again, when Shaul remembers, or when there is a parade and he, because of his insecurities, he understands as the people's perception, and he's so worried about the people's perception. So we already discussed this, which is why we then continued to pasuk yud of all the different understandings of, especially as we compare this to a later scene, and concluded that this is probably a prophetic premonition of Shaul, who knows that he has the potential to kill David. But the pshat seems to be, does David know any of this? No, meaning has any of the latent feelings of despise and threatening of Shaul, has any of it really been manifest based on this? No. Otherwise, we would think that David would respond differently. If you're David right now in the king's palace, what are you thinking? Exactly the way that Shmuel wrote Perek Tetzayin. You're thinking, now I understand, Yad Hashem. This is how I'm going to become king. How am I going to become king? I'm being trained by the king, and I have a brit with the crown prince. So that's how I'm going to become king. And by the way, it's not just David's perception. It's the way that the Navi writes it, so that you realize, could this have been the way that David? Yes. When we talk about choosing your own adventures, again, it's really our choices that change. In the end, is God omniscient? In the end, will David be king? Yes. The way that he becomes king is really up to whom? Up to us, meaning up to Shaul, up to Jonathan, up to David, which is so tragic, because could Jonathan have lived through this? Okay, we won't even go there. So let's take a look at
Shani,
now.
is there any evidence of what the age difference was between Jonathan and David?
No, but we are going to prove that it was, meaning it definitely at the stage of Perek Yud Zayin, it was somewhat significant, keeping in mind that Jonathan has already been fighting various wars, and David was the who's just coronated. At the same time, and by the time Jonathan dies on Gilboa, and we hear about his children, David also has children. So he's definitely older than David. We don't know by how many years.
By how much? Okay, thank you.
Exactly. And we'll see, it will also relate to how long Shaul serves as king, which we already discussed is very ambiguous. Remember the 2 years, 1 year, but we're going to revisit that. So not to worry, but that still won't really help us figure out Jonathan's age by virtue of the fact that we don't know how old Shaul was when he had Jonathan. So we know that he is the older statesman, let's put it that way, and he really is apprenticing David to assume, right? By giving him the me'il, he basically is saying, I want you to inherit me. I want you to succeed me in some way, shape, or form. So let's take a look now at where we left off in Perek Yud Chet, Pasuk Yud Daled. Now, really, again, just to remind you of Pasuk Yud Gimel, Vayisireu Shaul mi'imo, Vayisimeu lo sar elef. Again, just to remind us that because he's scared of the possibility he may kill David, what does he do instead? He gets rid of David. Now, again, why does he get rid of David? He's threatened by David. So does he want, so one way of explaining it is he doesn't want to kill David. So he sends him off to fight wars. At the same time, obviously, if he has this premonition, deep down, does he want to kill David? Yes, he doesn't necessarily want to act on it, but if he wants to kill David, what's a great way to passively kill David. Excellent. And we're going to see that this is going to be in case, it's almost as if the Navi keeps writing it this way for us to know that you could understand it as pure intentions, right? David is a great warrior, so send him off to war. But the fact that it's going to be repeated over and over again, he keeps sending him off to fight against the Plishtim. This is the Navi's way of telling you that each time he sent him, there was an ulterior motive. What was that ulterior motive? To get him killed. Now, please remember this for future stories of David as well, right? You all know what I'm referring to, but pretend you don't, because we don't know it yet, but pretend you don't. Gana, so now a pasuka. So with that, Gana vayisireu Shaul, and the psukim, this is what it's called. Take a look just for a moment at pasuk Yud Bet and pasuk Yud Gimel. I'm sorry, I'm going back one more pasuk. It's called the anadiplosis, when the Navi, or when the text plays with the words and divides the words up into two different psukim. What do I mean by this? Anadiplosis. Ana is literally a word. Anadiplosis is break up, right? Okay. Diplosis. Anadiplosis. It's one word. Vayar Shaul. So back to pasuk Yud Bet. Vayira Shaul milifnei David kehaya Hashem imo umeim Shaul sar. What is Shaul afraid of? So he said he's afraid, and based on the premonition understanding, he's afraid of. I mean, he's afraid before David. What's he afraid of? So now we understand he's afraid of himself. He's afraid of killing him. Kehaya Hashem imo. And what else does he see? He's not going to succeed because Hashem is with him, meaning in that nevuah, David keeps getting away. Umeim Shaul sar. And what does Shaul realize? He doesn't have the Ruach Hashem. He doesn't have the military prowess, everything that we discussed last year as well. Here's the anadiplosis. Vayisirehu. So until now, we said what helped compensate for the lack of Hashem's presence in Shaul's life? The presence of David. Now, though, here's the turn. Because he's so afraid of David, because Hashem is with him, and Hashem is not with Shaul. We're like, wait, but that was the whole point. Hashem isn't with you. Bring David, and through David, Hashem will be in your life. That's how Shmuel wrote it, showing Shmuel, don't worry. Again, I'm still taking care of you. Don't worry. Again, really through David, Hashem will continue to be with you, and you can live happily ever after. But this is where everything changes.
Whatever it's called.
And it's a process between the words umeim Shaul sar. See the word sar? And then vayisirehu. It's using the same word, but breaking it up into two different verses. Isn't that fascinating? And you have this, each time it comes up, I'll show it, but you have this very often in definitely in Tehillim, right? One word flowing into the next pasuk as well. It's a way of showing a connection. So obviously in poetry, it flows much more naturally. And the narrative, it's telling you that there is a clear relationship, right, between the juxtaposition. So Me'im Shaul Sar, we're supposed to say, so keep David by you because God isn't with you. That's how it's depicted in Perek Ted Zayin that we just read, right? That Hashem isn't with Shaul, but Hashem is with David. Great, bring David into Shaul. Well, what's happened? But these are the words that we already saw that now, and even when David is playing, we had Vayera and Pasuk Chet, Vayira now, and ultimately Pasuk Tet, Vayi Shaul Oyein et David, Mahayomahu Vahala. And we discussed what does the word Oyein mean? He is angry. He maybe even, remember we saw the Mitzvot, he detests. And what does it stem from? The Navi told you because Vayira beinav hadavar, Vayomer natnu leDavid rabavot, v'li natnu halafim v'odlo acham lucha. Knowing that he doesn't have the melucha, he's so insecure. And in the back of his mind, he's always thinking about that nevuah, that Hashem is going to give it. L'reacha hatov mimaka. So what does he think every time he meets someone of caliber? He's the one who's going to usurp my throne. He's the one who's going to usurp my throne. And now who's suspect number one? David. So instead of keeping Hashem, he has a choice, right? So definitely, but he has a choice right now. He can keep Hashem in his life by doing what? By keeping David in his presence. But now, Umeim Shaul Sar, we would think, okay, but keep Hashem, no. Vayisirehu Shaul mi'imo. So how do we read Vayisirehu? He's not just removing David from his presence, he's removing Hashem. Right? And then you already know this is a religious work, not a historical work. What is the Navi telling you? When you remove Hashem from your presence, what happens?
You're doomed to fail.
You're doomed to fail. That's exactly it. You're not going to be able to overcome. Again, all of those inner fears, all the paranoia. No, no. And interestingly, with all, so I'm sure many of us, right, were witness to how so many remarkable, obviously the Chatufim, but also Chayalim and mothers of Chayalim and mothers of Chalalim and each and every one of us. I said we were all involved, right? And we are all involved in this war. And when you ask people, what's your support system? Right. So Baruch Hashem, that Am Yisrael is an amazing support system, right? This has been remarkable, a remarkable support system. When especially, the Chatufim, but even I think all of us, right? I think we can say that it was a major part of our support system. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's exactly it. That someone asked me, Shani, you're giving chizuk to everyone. Who gives you chizuk? And firstly, Am Yisrael, everything, but also when I'm angry, when I'm sad, who do I turn to? Turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Really? Like Hashem helps you get through it? Yeah. Like why? But does Hashem answer you? What's the answer? Yes. Sometimes, by the way, why is Hashem such a great support system? It's just a matter of I can scream to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I can cry to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when no one else, it's 2:00 in the morning and I can't go to sleep. Who do you turn to? So I do have those few friends that you can call at 2:00 in the morning. And but there's obviously HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So by Yisirehu, we're looking at, now this is a tragic pasuk, that Shaul is removing Hashem's presence through David in his life. And now David is literally succeeding, meaning everything that Shaul is doing to try to sabotage, right, David from taking over his malchut is actually, by default, helping on the broader level. What do I mean by this? So back to the very beginning of Sefer Shmuel, we discussed that there are two realms of kingship in Am Yisrael. You're a king in the eyes of God, and you're also a king in the eyes of the people. That's why there were triple coronations for Shaul, if you remember, and we just saw with David. He's a king in the eyes of Hashem. That's very nice. But practically, he can't be a king until he's a king in the eyes of the people. So what Shaul is doing is trying to sabotage to make sure that the people will never see him as connected to kingship. I'm getting him out of the palace, removing his presence. But ironically, what do the people see? They see him succeeding in war, and exactly. Excellent. Now, Pasuk Yudalid. Vayhi David l'chod rachat maskil v'Hashem imo. So as opposed to Me'im Shaul Sar, Hashem is with David still. Vayar Shaul asher hu maskil ma'od. And that's exactly what Shaul sees, no matter what he's trying to do. What's happening? David is maskil. What does it mean, maskil, in this context? He's succeeding. That's exactly haskala, meaning he has seichel, so he sees now that he's smart. Is that what it means? Asher hu maskil, it means that he is not just he has seichel, he is continuing to grow in seichel. Asher hu maskil ma'od, and especially in Sefer Mishlei, seichel is also basically what we would call today street smarts. In other words, he sees what is he gaining. He's actually helping to train David in what he's hoping, right? When you send someone, that's like, sending someone who is vulnerable, sending someone naive out to, exactly, like sending your young child out to Machane Yehuda to get a good bargain on something. Chances are what's going to happen? Right, your child keeps saying, I want to go to Merkaz Ha'ir. Again, why don't you trust me? Okay, here's 20 shekels, here's my list. Let's see if you can do this. And what happens? They fail, right? Yay, right? The parents, you see, I knew you couldn't handle it. What happens though? Sometimes, every once in a while, you have that very savvy 8-year-old boy who comes back with everything you asked him with chain. And with, I was going to say with a 50 shekel profit, like what happened, right? And what happened?
Hashem?
Exactly, meaning they have this, they're maskil, right? That when you expose them, they know how to work the system, right? And basically, that's exactly it. He was hoping that the system, what system are we talking about? War, right? That going out to war would eventually break him, would kill him, would wound him, but instead what's happening? It's strengthening him. Why is the term sechel though, maskil? Because really what's happening, he's learning the skills of war, all different types of warfare. I can imagine that he's giving him very difficult operations. And what keeps on happening? David is like, wow, this is a tough one. Okay, let me think about this, and that's how you become a great chess player. That's how you become, right? He's a maskil ma'od. So Shaul is setting him up, v'Hashem imo. Everyone see what's going on here? The Navi is basically writing to us, okay, option one, what could have happened? How could David have ended up as king? In the palace. Again, yes, it really could have been easy for everyone. Again, Shaul and Yonatan would have trained him. Everyone would have seen this as a unified, as a very smooth transition. Everyone see that? Shaul decides because of his own ego and insecurities that no, that is not what's going to happen. Instead, I'm going to sabotage God's plan. And if it's David, I'm going to get rid of him. But Hashem imo, Hashem is with David. So instead Hashem said, okay, plan B. What's plan B? If he's not going to develop his savviness, then great. Then now through all these experiences, what's going to happen? That's how he'll be trained. Okay, again, through all of this. And that's why it's important that the word maskil be employed. B'chol Yisrael v'Yehuda ohevet David. So we went from Avdei Shaul to now Kol Yisrael v'Yehuda. How did that happen? Because in war, everyone sees, right, who the warriors are. Beforehand, he was just in the palace. So wait a second, plan B is actually even better. I mean, it's much more difficult, it's much more challenging, but it's catalyzing the entire process. More people know about David this way. Beforehand, it was just the people in the close perimeters. All of a sudden, we're thinking, wow, David's circles are getting wider and wider. So can everyone rewrite the story now? What could happen right now? What could happen? Excellent. Excellent. The Am can say, he's really great. We want David. Could that happen? Yes. Who's going to sabotage that? Shaul. So just get ready. Exactly. But still, they can say, they know that he's coming from the house of the king. They can now have a say, right? Meaning you're supposed to feel, wow, this is great. Hashem is now working on plan B, which is that the nation, the circles, right, of David's support are getting wider. That's phenomenal, right? Which means David Melech Yisrael in one or two prakim. What do you think? Could be. Because they see Yotzei Uba, we discuss is a military terminology because he's leading them in war, coming back to successful. This is wonderful. Thank you. So this is, I was waiting for someone to say this. Talia Todaraba, why Yisrael and Yehuda? So we noticed this already. Each time they went out to war, the numbers, remember, are counted separately, that Yehuda was always. Again, we see this at the beginning of Sefer Yoshua as well. They were always the warrior people. Remember, Mi Ya'aleh, the beginning of Shoftim as well, Yehuda Ya'aleh. Yehuda was always they were the militiamen. They were the Tanchanim, right? Or they were, I don't know, Golani, right? They're the ones who always go. They are the warriors. And they always led, but plus you have the people from Yisrael. So unfortunately, again, it was almost seen in the context of war as if there were, so one machlaka was Yehuda, the other machlaka was Yisrael. And again, different roles within Yisrael. That's why, as soon as you know they're going out to war with the Plishtim, remember we discussed that Yishai actually is one of the patrons of the war, right? He sends his sons, and again, Yehuda would want a king to go and help organize this army to go help them fight. So again, this also tells us, by the way, that that with all the good that there was in the military, it created a schism between Yehuda and Yisrael. And that's why we gave Shaul a lot of credit, because through his malchut, which was really initiated by the militiamen, right? Go out and fight the wars against the Plishtim. What did he succeed in doing?
Unified.
He unified. Okay, so now they're unified. What's going to happen if the king is from Yehuda, though, as opposed to from one of Israel? So let's stay tuned.
Single tense.
Correct, correct.
But I don't understand, this is before the kingdom was split, right? And the
Correct,
whole
but there was
conflict
still,
with
there was
Israel.
always tension. There was always tension.
Between Yehuda and all the other.
In military, remember, we saw that, again, especially at the beginning of Shoftim, Hu Ya'aleh, Shimshon, excellence, meaning they're on the border. Israel is everyone else.
So they go out of.
No, they went out to war, but Yehuda was considered, like, that's why I said Golani. You know, Yehuda was considered the stronger warriors. Binyamin, they were great archmen, meaning Shaul is a great warrior, but he needs Yehuda.
I don't even.
Sayeret
see why we
Masal.
Have to write it like this here, like.
To show you that in the context of war, who likes David?
Everybody.
Everyone, even Yehuda. Well, truth is, Yehuda's his own people, right? He's from the tribe of Yehuda, so you should know that in war, wow, if it would have said Yisrael, okay, but it's Yisrael be Yehuda, meaning everyone appreciates that he's a skilled warrior. And by the way, he didn't turn out to be he didn't start as a skilled warrior. He himself told Shaul, what type of warrior am I? I was going to say a guerrilla warrior, right? I fight against lions and bears, right? That's what he said. And that served his advantage against Goliath. But he had to be trained how to fight. Even if you have great, there are great vigilantes out there, but they all have to go through basic training, in Sahel. And here, David gets his basic training. But he doesn't just get basic training. What does he get? He gets officer. He's promoted right away. By the way, no one's promoted right away to run these operations. Here's the irony. Why was he promoted to officer's training course? And then he became Sayeret Makan, like overnight, because Shaul wanted him to fail. Isn't that something? Again, but he came back with 100 shekel profit. Okay, why? Which word? Vayagar, well, he was afraid. But this is more than Vayivchad. Vayagar is literally like an internal trembling. This is generally people associate Vayagar with paranoia, right? That he had this constant fear. It's a constant overtaking fear. Sorry? That's a Vayagar Bigrar. You can say, you can use that term as well. This is Vayagor with a kamat, as opposed to a patach. That's Vayagar with a patach. This is Vayagor. Vayagor mi panav. B'chol Yisrael v'Yehuda ohevet David ki hu yotzei uva lifnehem. Vayomer Shaul al David. So now we get to, again, everything that we've been speaking about until now. So notice that this chapter isn't really telling us, I'm going to say chronological events, in as much as depicting for us the change in the relationship between Shaul and David. What's Yonatan's role? Yonatan is the foil, right? Exactly the same words that were employed by Shmuel in Perek Tet Zayin are replaced by, again, with Yonatan doing the same things that Shaul was doing to show that Shaul doesn't feel this anymore. Yonatan feels it now. Shaul feels all these negative feelings. And then leading to this, then, if I would read this pasuk in a vacuum, it may mean something else. But look at pasuk Yudzayin now. Vayomer Shaul el David. Hine biti hagdola merav, ota eten lacha liisha. Achayeli leven chayel v'yilachem melchamot Hashem. V'Shaul amar al tihi adibo utihibo yad plishtim. So we have so many questions on this, right? Basically, Shaul says, oh, here's my older daughter, Merav. I'm giving you to her as a wife, but it's on condition. What's the condition? First, you have to prove yourself by doing what? By going and, again, and literally he says, V'yilachem milchamot Hashem. No longer officer's training course, no longer an operation here and there. What do I want you to do? I want you to go and initiate wars. I want you to go and fight wars. And the Navi tells you this isn't because Plishtim were, a sudden threat. They're always a threat. But it's not because there was an operation that had to be fought. Rather, now you're all supposed to say this pasuk should have belonged earlier. Isn't that what he meant beforehand? When Vayisi Rehu, Shaul Mimo, Vayisimeu Sar Elef. So yeah, but placing him as Sar Elef meant that he wouldn't be in front of him, that he wouldn't kill him, and there was a chance that he would be killed. By asking him to go and initiate wars, what are you doing? you're increasing the chances of being killed 100-fold. Meaning, right? Meaning we've all sent our sons to the army, but I don't know, until this war, were we really so nervous? No. Again, now, yes. Or again, I recently told someone, we have our son, Shmuel is going back, Yud Aleph Cheshvan. I keep thinking that, okay, Rachel Imena was watching over him, and someone said, oh, but you shouldn't be nervous anymore. Going into Asa, where's like the words? What do you mean? Of course I'm nervous. Of course. But I was thinking to myself, wow, that would be nice, not to be nervous anymore, right? Wouldn't that be nice? And I remember those days. You remember those days of not being so nervous? No?
No.
Okay, I'm looking, no, we forgot about them. Okay, but Bezrat Hashem, they will come back soon.
All right.
Thank you. So now Dahlia is asking the other question. Before you even ask that, and so now we understand. Here comes, so we said we had set up number 1, the natural transition. It would just be Shaul training him. He'll be his mentor, disciple, and alliance with Yonatan. Great. Option number 2, the people circle. Option number now, Shaul sees that also. So instead, let's sabotage that by doing what? Getting him killed. But here's the irony, that every time he tries to sabotage a plan, what do you know? This isn't a historical work. This is a religious work. Whose plan is this? That David is going to be king. Hashem's plan. So Hashem is working with our choices. Nachon? So Shaul says, okay, option number 1, no, not going to let the easy way happen. Option number 2, no. So now, and when Shaul says, I just want him killed, Hashem says, okay, we'll work with that also. How will we work with that? His whole idea is, he truly believes that David is the Re'acha HaTov Mimaka. Let me tempt him, and here we're going to aggravate the situation even more. Let me tempt him with Malchut, right? How can he become Melech now? Last time it was easy, right? He had this brit with Yonatan, but now he sees, right, that he's not playing for me anymore. I'm not here, but don't worry, I'll bring him back into the fold. How? With Meirav, right? I'll make him part of the family. What's David thinking? Really, you have to remember, David doesn't know what we, the omniscient readers, know, right? David is thinking, okay, this is so cool. I started off in the house. I thought that it was going to be like an easy transition, but no, okay. I don't, Shaul wants me to get this training in war. Amazing, amazing. Now I'm being trained in war, right? If you're David, everything is unbelievable now. And again, are you nervous, by the way, is David? Is he afraid he's going to die in war? Why not? Exactly, because Hashem said, king, and he's like, oh my gosh, this is such a cool divine plan, right? That now Hashem set it up for me again, and even he doesn't know Shaul's intentions, but wow, Shaul is helping me become this king, become this great warrior. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Next thing David knows, what is Shaul offering him? Become my son-in-law. So I was like, oh my gosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wow, Hodu LaHashem Kitov, Kili Olam Chasto, right? This makes so much sense. Now, from Shaul's perspective, why is Shaul doing this? Just to up the ante. Everyone say that? Oh, you want my daughter? What do you have to do?
You have to go to war.
You have to initiate wars now. I'm setting you up for death. But now comes the greater question. Wait a second. Shaul, why are you offering your daughter? I thought, back to Perek Yud Zayin, he had whoever goes to fight against Goliath gets to marry my daughter. The Kalev Achsa agreement. Remember that from? Excuse me, David already earned her. So again, why is this considered a grandiose? And why does Shaul provide it with a condition? Again, what's the condition? You have to go and fight wars now, and really you have to go into Gaza, right, under attack. And why? Shouldn't you have given Meirav earlier? But now something even more confusing. Take a look at this. After he proposes this, which we said shouldn't even be a proposal, it's a de facto part of the agreement. What's David's response? Again, Vayomar Shaul David, Hinei biti agdola meiravotai ten lecha lisha, chayil li leben chayil, hilachem melchamot. That's the condition. Vayomar David el Shaul, mi anochi umi chayai, mishpachat avi b'Yisrael, ki yeh chatan lamelech. David knew that was the condition, and what does David say?
Who am I?
wow, I don't think I'm worthy of becoming the king's son-in-law, right? And basically, David is thinking, right, this is really Hashem is like setting this up so perfectly. And by David saying this, why is David saying this? Now, if I ask you, why do you think David is saying this? Mi anochi umi chayim. Again, mishpachat avi v'Yisrael ki chatan lamelech. How to be part of the king's family? It's humility. It really is, right? When you read this, it's humility. And what should happen next? Don't read the next pasuk. What should happen? It's like, wow. And Shaul should say, but you're a gibor chayil, you're perfect for my daughter, and you've proven yourself, and eze yofi. Instead, just so that David should realize that basically he's given an opportunity, but he's missing it. But really, Shaul's intention, the Navi wants to tell you, has nothing to do with bringing David into the family. How do you know? Oh, fine. You don't want her? Okay. Right, fine. I'll find another way to have you fight wars. Keep this in mind. But David. Okay, fine. I really didn't want her to marry you anyway. How do you know that? Because at that moment, meaning instead of trying to appease David and saying, no, I really want you to marry her, I really want you to be part of the family, which is probably what David expected he would say after he, very humbly refused. Instead, Shaul gave Meirav at that moment to Adriel Hamacholati Liisha. What's interesting, by the way, is that Adriel is described in Devrei Yamim as Adriel ben Barzilai Hamacholati. Just for those who remember, but you should know this yet. Barzilai, the father, is going to be the one to take care of David when he runs away from Absalom, right? So just in terms of ages, right? Shani was asking, Adriel is young, right? Adriel HaMacholati, where is Mechola? We all know the Shadmot Mechola, right? Basically, by Bekat HaYarden. That's exactly it. He gives from, which is the border of Binyamin and Yehuda. So whereas David is from the Yehuda, right? Yehuda Yerushalayim, the southern border with Binyamin. Again, Adriel is from again Midbar Yehuda. He's from Yehuda. Can you imagine? It's a smack in the face, right? But he's from a warrior family. He gives him Adriel Hamacholati Liisha. We're pausing for a moment to understand what's going on.
Choice, maybe do you want to marry this person?
Oh, excellent. So Tara's asking, was the woman ever given a choice? Do you want to marry this person? Not the king's daughter. It's not. It was viewed as political alliances, which is why we're going to be surprised by the next pasuk. Exactly. The next pasuk is an aberration from the norm, and we'll prove that. I'll already say it. Michal is the only woman in all of Tanakh described as loving the man. Meaning women don't get married because they love the man. Women get married because, Rachel doesn't teach it. And not only that, she screams at her first interaction with Yaakov is Havali banim v'mayin meta anochi. Her first interaction is not a very loving one, right? Havali banim v'mayin meta anochi. And I'm not even talking about the midrashic, letting her sister marry there. If that love was really, it wasn't. She's Ima Rachel. No, that's a very unromantic relationship. Ruth and Boaz, very unromantic. He doesn't love her and she doesn't love him. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean that they don't love each other. It's just that exactly. The Navi doesn't write it that way to tell you that it's not a romantic marriage. I mean, maybe there was romance. Chazal say actually they had a one-night stand and then he died. So again, because it's not about romance, it's about responsibility.
Very unromantic.
Shir Hashirim is very romantic. Pesach is very romantic. Kabbalat Mamad Har Sinai. You don't keep mitzvot because they're romantic. Oh my gosh, I love Shabbos, even though you do probably, but you don't keep Shabbos because you have a romantic relationship with Shabbat. You keep Shabbos because you have a responsibility. Correct. Because it's such an aberration. We're going to see. Mamash, very powerful. Michal changes the.
emotional stuff with Rachel is when she yells at him, davening for her.
Exactly, very unloving, right? Meaning Yaakov loves Rachel, but we never hear that Rachel loves Yaakov.
But he was actually like all
Sorry.
the time.
Sorry, Rashi tried to, yes, Rashi, and then,
Member of Shaul's family.
thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful, right? So we've seen Yonatan though loves David, but we haven't seen exactly, and that changed the plan and Shaul sabotaged that, right? So don't worry. Gana yafeh ma'od. That's why this is really the parak of relationships, right? Shaul, Avdei Shaul, Yehuda Israel Yehuda, and now Michal.
So I was say something.
Oh, kavod, baruch shekivant, yafeh ma'od, yafeh.
It seems she has not the Avril.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about the past perfect. Kol kavod, beautiful. We have so many questions here.
Because, but if, when he sent Zelfi to initiate war, is that something that on Israel also like?
It's an
like, did
excellent
she
question.
just for that reason?
An excellent question. That's like, meaning Atara, that's like without October 7th, you mind if I ask it this way? Could we have initiated war with Hamas and Hezbollah?
I think they should get rid of all the tunnels.
See, that's not something.
Could you
They
repeat
come
that
to
question,
one.
please?
Yes, Atara said when Shaul proposes that David, literally, it's a proposition, right? B'hilachem milchamot Hashem. Again, this isn't just, okay, Yotzei Oba. Yotzei Oba means if there's a military operation, you go out. He's basically challenging him. I want you to start wars. That's exactly it. So she said, was that, is that good or bad for Am Yisrael? So because there's a constant threat, it's not crazy to start wars. We're going to see David also on his own. Sometimes you start war. He doesn't even say just with the Plishtim. And who else could he start wars with? Remember, they never finished the conquest of Yehoshua. He could start wars with Ammon, Kol HaKavod, which he will. Isn't that something? Meaning there are a lot of borders that need to be secured. That's why I asked, we could, even if it wasn't a wartime, we could have initiated war with Hezbollah. We could have initiated war with Hamas because they're an ever-present threat. And the war against Iran was in planning for 10 years. So we could have, again, so Sharon says, but it wouldn't have been wise. Why not? Because there's an Iran axis and international pressure. And by the way, if you name it, we would have initiated war with, choose, Hamas. What would have happened? Would we have had more soldiers die?
But if
You don't think so?
The full things I'm telling you?
More, you don't think we would have had more soldiers die? Soldiers, not citizens, soldiers. You think there would have been, yeah, because we would have surprised them. There you have it. So Biziuk, you wouldn't have had the international backing, but there wasn't really much. So that's exactly it, meaning right now, by the way, isn't this Yad Hashem? Can we just remember we said, okay, here's my little catharsis of Putchin Shavua with all of you, that it really is remarkable that, the government, as we speak, is being, what do we do? Because Hamas hasn't returned all and they know exactly where they are. Like, okay, all of a sudden, like 2 more come, they know. I was thinking, really, you don't think they know where Hadar Golden is? Like, really, meaning like,
Hashem is doing to them
So-
what he did to Paro.
exactly, meaning, so
Yeah.
this is amazing. While we're thinking, I don't know, we're trying to put pressure on Trump, like, should we go back in? Because so we should stop the ceasefire. They're killing each other, meaning, but technically, would we have grounds, even that, can we start another war? Yeah. And
in 2014, we could have.
that's exactly it.
So many tunnels were built since then.
A preemptive attack. I mean, that's what he's asking. That's Bihilachim Mokamot. So if you're asking, does it go on today? Yes. Mitsuyan. So now back to all this. Firstly, please.
Says that, Shaul is offering up his wife and then the Torah
Daughter.
sorry. Then the Torah says, so that they Hashem can kill him.
Exactly.
But
Meaning that's what
but
he's
that's
telling.
interesting that just the Torah normally, I don't.
The
I
Navi.
don't have anything. But then,
Yeah.
give us the reasons why they're showing us there's.
All
no
hakavod.
ambiguity. He's-
Correct.
he's
Meaning
very-
David doesn't know this. This is the greatness of, being the omniscient reader. So the Torah, for example, say, "Ve'chazik Hashem et leif Paro." You know that. Paro doesn't know that, right? And I don't know if Am Yisrael knew "Vayichazik Hashem et leif Paro," but you get to read that. You get to read what's really going on. You get to read, and you're right. In Nevuah, we do have this often that the Navi says, "I know what the real intentions were. I'm sharing with you, even if they were never spoken, even if David has no idea." And it's actually enhanced through the fact that by writing it, that I could probably figure out that that was his intention, but not only does it corroborate, but it also corroborates that David has no idea. Isn't that fascinating? So if you're David, what are you thinking is going on all the time? Shaul, we know, is trying to sabotage the divine plan of David being king. For David, what does it look like? Hashem is, orchestrating the event so perfectly because each one is a step closer to Malchut. And that's what's bothering Shaul so much. Every time he's trying to sabotage, David
Gets more successful.
So Mimi, I'm so happy you asked that because that's part of the beauty of Nevuah, right? It corroborates that these are religious messages and not just trying to tell us, some nice story. And that's an important facet in the entire story, to hear what Shaul's intentions are, which is so sad. That's why I truly believe that story that we spoke about, the spheres, really is a premonition, because just a few psukim later, the Torah is going to tell us what's going on in his mind. So of course that makes sense that it was introduced with a nevuah, that was a nevuah in his mind, and it never really happens. I think it even corroborates it further. So now we're going to start with, wait a second, this should have been a de facto, meaning why is Shaul making it conditional on David fighting wars? He already fought against Goliath. That should have been what he received, in which case it only aggravates the question, why does David promptly turn him down? He should have accepted the offer. He actually should have demanded it earlier. So let's take a look. Again, sorry, he doesn't want this.
Which daughter?
Yafe. Excellent.
So if you're giving the eldest daughter,
It says in your app, doesn't it?
more than no. Now it says
Now it says. Right. All it says is BT. Nothing.
So if you think you're going to be given like the youngest princess, who's not really important, but it's like an honorific, and now you're being given the oldest daughter with
Interesting.
implications of a possibility of following and like taking a more important part in the royal
You
family.
would understand that because
Okay.
you understand monarchy.
Yes,
better than
monarchy.
us.
Even though, even though, right. Yafe. Exactly. Even though in war, right, even though, and I'm glad that you mentioned this because Amanda definitely knows what it means to also to follow the monarchical family. Nachon, does everyone know the monarchical family? Do you know the names of Will and Kate's children? Well, I don't, but right, but you, yeah. Under Charlotte. Now, thank you so much. Why do you follow them? Because one day he's going to be the king, and they're going to be the princes and princess, and the older boy, what's his name? George. Thank you. It's going to be King George one day, right? He'll be the crown prince, and you seem very upset. Oh, George. Oh, it goes back. Okay, this is there. And so everyone, do you think people knew Shaul's daughters? That's right, for sure. So when Shaul proposes that he's going to give his daughter, what do you, just like Lavan, and we're going to get back to Lavan and Rachel, and you always give the older daughter first. So did everyone know which daughter he was talking about?
Yeah.
The pshat is yes. And just in case, it says Hinei biti hagadolah here, basically he wants to make it clear that this is the daughter that's going to, meaning that married, basically, you have Yonatan, but then you also have the oldest daughter, which means if anything happens to Yonatan who goes out to wars, then it's going to be, you're going to be the king, right? And David, why doesn't David jump on this? So that's exactly what's bothering the Parshanim. Excuse me, again, don't you see that you don't know that Shaul is doing this as a setup. You should see it as a divine setup. Why do you turn him down? So the Targum Yonatan says that really, he really is being very humble. He means that no, his life doesn't have special value. Meaning I already see myself. Says the Targum Yonatan, he means I don't need your daughter to be seen as part of your family because I see myself as part of your family. That's so beautiful. And the truth is that it's true that does David need to marry the king's daughter in order to become the king? No, because he already has a brit with Yonatan. So he basically says, "Oh, that's so sweet, that's so nice, but like it's okay. You know, I don't need it. I'm not so special. Go and find someone special for her."
Maybe
No, and not only that, he knows that Hashem gave him a promise of being king. So he doesn't really need Shaul. So that's what the Targum Yonatan is saying. Exactly. I don't really need it. Or exactly. The Radak is just saying, maybe, but it's okay, we'll see. The Radak also says that, and he basically is saying that he and his family are unimportant. In other words, I know you proposed this, but you had no idea who was going to come and fight, you know, in which case, no, like it ended up being me. I know that you're proposing this because you had promised this to me earlier, but you know what? You exactly, it's a local matim. You know, I'm not important, even though Yishai was a very important family. But still, but when it comes to kingship, it's not about liking, right? You marry, you know, I don't know, you know, King Louis of France's daughter, just so that Spain can get along, you know, meaning that's how it's, and that's why the Michal is really a Yotzei Min HaKlal. That's why, don't worry, we're just building up to this. Again, the Ralbag says the reason.
Gave it to somebody else. What does it say about Yishar But Yishar had the Rabbanit that.
No, that's the next pasuk. Not because she was given to Adriel, but because Vatahav Michal, Vayishar Davar Beinei Shaul, that Michal likes David. That's the next pasuk. But the Ralbag says that the reason why he puts it on his family is because David really has an insecurity. What's his insecurity? I'm from Ruth HaMoabiyah, right? So that's another explanation. But basically, again, we see that this is really just a segue as well to tell us about the next part, meaning Shaul's really, the Navi just told us, as Mimi highlighted, that this is really a method of Shaul to sabotage. In other words, should Shaul have given Meirav regardless? Yes. But basically, David is explaining why, even though you promised me that you would give the daughter, it seems that David, meaning why didn't David demand it right after the war? Because David really felt, Mamash, this is part of the greatness of David, that he really felt that he didn't deserve it. You know, you make these promises, but I'm not like Othniel ben Knaz, you know, who deserves your daughter, Kalev. No, Shaul, I really don't deserve your daughter. And then Shaul proposed it. Fine, you turned her down because you felt that, you know, I said it without knowing who was going to come. But now, knowing who you are, David, I actually want you to marry my daughter. But not because, but then the Navi tells us, don't think that he really wanted David. He just wants David dead. Again, now that's really what's going on. David, who doesn't know any of this, David still says, no, even though you're proposing it, I still believe that I don't deserve it. So it's really, one can argue, a second proposal. This time, again, he proposes it. And David, I really think you should do this. It wasn't just by chance. Okay, so he gives her, okay, David, you don't want her? I'll give her to a different warrior. I'll give her to Adriel HaMecholati, which, by the way, helps cover up his whole incentive, right? Meaning, if it was really just to have David killed, then what should he do? Just not marry, insist, or not marry Meirav off. He has to cover that up. So no, it's just that I want Meirav married to a warrior. So he chooses Adriel HaMecholati. Okay. ותהב מיכל בת שאול את דוד, ויגידו לשאול, וישר הדבר בעיניו. She loves him.
You said in about.
She's the only one. I said she's the only one in all of Tanakh who loves a man. Of whom it says that she loves a man. Is that remarkable?
Yeah.
And not only that, but we're going to see that this is the Navi's way, right? You've gone through so many Sfarim in Tanakh, and you've seen men love women. So far, who have you seen? You've seen Yaakov, you've seen Yitzchak love Rivka, he's the first one. You've seen Yaakov love Rachel, you've seen Elkanah love Hannah, right? It's very fresh in your minds. So that doesn't stand out. And as much as you know, to parallel all the stories, but this should strike you as strange. Wait a second. No woman has ever, the text has never said that a woman loves a man. But it doesn't say it. Doesn't say it. And no. Again, she has a tshuka, but tidaber, again, not libo, but no. And which already tells us, this is the Navi's way of saying, okay, again, this is a little bit of an aberration. It's a little awry, right? Meaning this isn't the norm. It's an aberration. It's not the norm, right? The Navi is saying this isn't the norm. What's he already telling you then about the David-Michal relationship? It's not the norm, right? In other words, and this is a fascinating idea. This is the Navi's way of saying this entire relationship is going to be very complex because it's not the norm. The reason I'm bringing this up is because people always ask when we learn the stories of Tanakh, right? Especially the women of Tanakh, do we see them as the klal, right? Do they represent all women? You know, do Yocheved and Miriam represent all the Nashim Tzidkaniot of that generation, or are they the aberration? So from here we see generally when you hear stories of women, and just as we've been saying, even of men, they really do serve as microcosms of the generation, like Devorah, exactly, right? Devorah, topsy-turvy, Genna generation, the warrior, look, the very fact that Yael also destroys her Ohel, right, for the sake of Am Yisrael, it shows that these are remarkable women, don't get me wrong, but that means that they represent other remarkable women. Exactly. That's meaning that the norm should be that everyone loves David, right? It should have said that by introducing Michal as loving David, the Navi is basically telling you, beware, right? Meaning, I know, I'm with you. And just to highlight this, it starts complex and it ends complex. What's the last thing that you hear about the Michal-David relationship? She doesn't have children. It's really tragic. Before you even know it's tragic, it's tragic. So before telling you it's tragic, the Navi wants to tell you it's actually complex, just very complex. This isn't the norm. Don't judge relationships based on this. And it also comes to highlight that so much of this is really the complexity of what's going on right now, meaning that you have Yonatan, who's the foil for Shaul, right? Shaul and Yonatan, both in Shaul initially loved David, and then Yonatan loves David. Shaul doesn't love David anymore, but Yonatan still loves David, right? And it's going to say, right, Yonatan loves David, but we saw also Shaul loved David. That's not by Michal, and nothing, again, should strike us as strange, but we keep seeing that Shaul is trying to sabotage, and we hear his own inner motives. Even when it comes to Michal, we're going to see complexity. There are times that she sides with David, which means automatically she's undermining her father, which means in Shaul terms that she's willing to risk her life, because if you undermine your father, then if he's Shaul, what is he willing to do? Kill you. And then there are other times that she'll support her father and undermine David. This is complex. This is very complex. Again, because of everything going on. So this relationship is really going to be I'm going to say almost the manifestation of the tension that we're supposed to be feeling in all these stories. But notice at this time, and we'll end with this.
Doesn't it also show a cruel side of Shaul, that he's
100%.
willing to risk his daughter's life?
Yes, that's beautifully said,
Not
Shani.
risk
I
her
never
life,
thought
but
about
make her
that.
a widow.
Meaning, think about that, right? Oh, sorry. Oh, wow. Wow.
Hi.
Does everyone say that you sound exactly alike?
Yes.
I know they look alike, but that is remarkable. Wow, sorry, kol hakavod. That was scary. And so Suri is 100% correct that Shaul is willing, because you already know his intentions, he's willing to make his daughter a widow, which is why the Navi has to tell you, again, Vayagidu l'Shaul, what should it say, Vayagidu l'Shaul? Now that Michal loves David, how should a father respond? If the whole reason you're doing this, you wanted to propose the marriage to kill David, again, then, oh wow, Vayishar hadavar be'inav. Then that's exactly it. That means that Shaul is willing to risk his daughter's happiness, right? Because he wants David dead. Take a look at what's going to happen now. So now he says, okay, Michal, you love David. Again, hopefully that's a more difficult, proposal to refuse. Vayomer Shaul, etznenu lo, utihi lo lemokesh. But she's my daughter. So what does she know? That it's dangerous to undermine me. So what is she going to do? She'll be my sabotage. That's right. She'll be my spy. Utihi bo yad plishtim. She'll be the mokesh through which he will fall by the hands of the plishtim. Meaning, she'll say, David, I love you so much. Come on, you can't refuse this. She'll put pressure. Now he'll have to go out to war. And great. Vayomer Shaul el David. Bishtayim titchaten bihayom. He says, look, I'm not giving up. So some Parshanim understand Bishtayim meaning, exactly, meaning I proposed one, now I'm proposing the other, meaning I'm doing this again, I'm so insistent. Or Shtayim just means the second one, meaning the second. Vayitzav Shaul et avadav. Because that's exactly, thank you. Vayomer Shaul et David b'shem titchaten bihayom, because it really is. He doesn't want him to see it as marrying my daughter. You're marrying into my family. You're marrying, you know what this means? You're part of the royal family now. But he already knows that David turned him down last time, and because it was a proposal from Shaul. So Shaul is so savvy. Vayitzav Shaul et avadav, dabru el David balat lemor, hine chafetz b'cha melech, b'chol avadav ayabucha, v'ata titchaten b'melech. Basically, knowing that Michal loves David, we know this very well. What do girls do when they love someone? If it's exactly, they spread the word. I have such a crush on him. Can you set me up with him? And she'll send heart emojis out. And so he says, now everyone in the king's palace will know that Michal has a crush on David. And that will help people do what? He tells his avadim. Okay, again, encourages them. Dabru al David balat lemor hine chafetz b'cha hamelech. Now, wait a second, please. And I hope you don't know the story yet, but I just want you to remember that we already discussed that many of the stories of Shaul are going to, just like Shaul stories are partially revisitations of Shmuel stories, they're going to be David stories that revisit Shaul stories, like we just saw, like sabotaging someone, putting them out to war so that it works out. So notice this. Shaul is basically planting his avadim without telling them what his intentions are. All he says is, I want you to spread the word. Balat means secretly, right, covertly. Say that the king really wants you. Chafetz, though, doesn't just mean want, means desire, right? Basically, what's he asking them to do? Talk about how Michal loves, meaning I want you to really plant this idea that the king really wants you. Basically, everyone see this? He's getting the servants involved to further sabotage, right? To further basically bring to danger to death. It's like now the servants are in on this. Just remember this, bringing the servants in on this chayfetz, right? This idea of loving. V'chol avadav ehavucha. And who else? And everyone loves you. So vata hitchatem b'melach. Come on, David, don't just do it for the king. Do it for all of us. Do it for all of us. Vayizabru abdei Shaul b'aznei David. And what happens when it becomes a campaign? Right, Michal loves David and Michal, for marriage. And again, when that happens, just remember this. I'm glad no one's saying that they know what story I'm referring to in David's life. Vayomer David, Hanekala beidechem hitchatein b'melech. So at this time he says, do you think it's a light thing? Like you're making it into like, oh my gosh, Michal has such a crush on you. You guys have to go out. Again, now you have to do this. He says, really? Again, you think that? Vanochi ish rash v'nikle. What does this highlight and also corroborate? That when David turned him down the first time out of humility, he meant it. He says, you're taking it lightly. You're saying, oh yeah, everyone loves you, loves you. He says, it means becoming the king's son-in-law. Why is David so apprehensive? Yes, his humility, but David, don't you realize that from David's perspective, isn't this a setup from Hashem? So why not? But that's exactly it. Why is he so reluctant to accept then? Thank you. And that what's the word that shows you he doesn't want to be trapped in? And the Shaul model of kingship, meaning it means becoming. That means you have to, you have to follow the customs of. He's second guessing. Exactly. He's second guessing whether this is the route through which Hashem wants him to become Melech. And therefore, what's really the word that he says twice? He uses it in two different ways, right? It's not a light. You think it's a light thing to become the king's son-in-law, and that again, because you see that I'm Vanochi ish rash, don't you see? I'm poor. Now he's not poor, but compared to the king and Benekla, and like, who am I? To become the king's son-in-law. What's the key word? What appears twice? The word kal. What's bothering him? Exactly like Ariana said, it's too easy. That in the back of his mind, he's wondering, I don't know, it's a little kal, isn't it? Like that's how I'm going to become king. And by becoming part of the king.
Really wanted him to be a son-in-law so much. Then he would have been so quick to say, okay, then marry off to somebody else.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
If it was from him.
Excellent.
Also, the question is, why did Shaul think that he had to spread, get his servants to do this success?
Beautiful.
The strategy.
Excellent.
Why couldn't he just speak to him?
Beautiful. And you see this in the last pasuk. Beautiful. Why couldn't David just come and tell Shaul this?
There was an aberration in their communications.
Beautiful, beautiful. So what you see is that exactly, this is really the third time that we have, again, and we'll end with this, the third time that we have this mention of Shaul wanting to harm David, meaning everything that's portrayed here is that there is an indirect relationship between David and Shaul to show you that Shaul is trying to cover this up, right? These are all indirect means just to show you, again, 3 times already from Pasuk Yud Zayin through Pasuk Chaf Hei, again, we've had this desire mentioned in an indirect way. Again, firstly, when Shaul says, okay, it shouldn't be me who kills him, let it be the Plishtim after his, premonition. And then again, okay, I'll give David to Meirav, so that she'll be, and now, again, Michal will be the Mokesh through which he'll fall by the hands of the Plishtim. So we're going to see Bezrat Hashem next week what happens, how and why David actually caves into this request to marry Michal, and what's his interest beyond just the marriage. Thank you.